8 a.m. in Charlotte is one of Drake's best songs of the 2020s. Where was this on the rest of the album, bro? That was a highlight moment from our new album reaction we did to Drake's For All the Dogs. If you guys want to check out the entire experience, hit the link in our pinned comment or in our description. But let's get into this review. Very anticipated album for Drake. He promised the old Drake being back, and he's been pumping out a lot of albums in the 2020s decade, but let's go category for category, starting off with the artist performance. How did you feel?
I'm not going to lie, I'm a bit underwhelmed, especially for Drake standards. And I think that's kind of a product of myself having such high expectations. Maybe that's my fault. Maybe it isn't. But just looking at the track list, I do feel like Drake did feel like kind of fall short in a lot of different areas on this album for myself. So example, bro, I could really start anywhere if you want to. Let's say Calling For You, example, with 21 Savage. That first verse, I mean, I'm always down for like that melodic type of Drake, especially when he's in the middle of singing and like auto crooning. It's really nice, and I've always been a big fan of that. But it just in this instance, it's weird. His vocals feel kind of like a bit too plastic, if I could say that to a certain extent, and that's just not a performance I'm all that into. If I'm being
tries
honest.
like some high pitch auto crooning, and it does sound like a bit forced, and it falls flat on impact just because it seems like he can't really mesh well within that pitch, to be honest with you. But how did you feel about Virginia Beach, which is the opener of the album? I personally liked how dynamic the performance was. I thought the singing was one of those rare R&B performances that I enjoyed off of the album. So
even at that, I had a problem with his voice again on that one, and maybe it's because he was doing this album on tour. I'm not sure where or when this song was recorded, but then again, like, I just feel like, yes, maybe you do get like that little brash of energy for the start of the track list, but then again, even on first listen, it didn't really impact me all that much, and it's one of those disappointing Drake intros for me. I wish he could have maybe started with something maybe a bit better. I know everyone's gonna say, oh, well, it's not the lyrical miracle Tuscan Leather. Oh, what are you expecting? And I don't want that. I don't care about that. What I'm just saying is that I wanted a solid performance on the intro, and to be honest with you, it kind of starts the album in a weird way. Going on to something like Amen, for example, even at that performance, I do feel like Tizo got the better out of the song, to be quite honest with you. And that's kind of a narrative within the album itself, and I think a sentiment for a lot of people is that you go through a bunch of these features and it feels like maybe it's Drake playing in their court, and that's something that I didn't necessarily like all that much. So example, even going on to something like I Don't Give a Fuck with Yeet, for example. Yeet had a great performance, and I'm going to speak a bit more about that, let's say, on the feature side of things. But then again, like, I feel like when Drake gets into that court, it doesn't feel natural. It feels kind of forced, and that's just not something I want to feel when I'm going through a Drizzy track.
Yeah, and
list.
it definitely sounds like a lot of the beat selection and certain styles that he was tapping into. Seems like Drake was driving into like the rage music lane, and it's not necessarily a lane that he sounds the most comfortable in, to be honest with you. Like, for example, if you look at I Don't Give a Fuck, or if you look at Fear of Heights, two songs that have those rage music, distorted bass type of productions, it sounds like Drake is like only half pronouncing the words, and the delivery is a bit rushed. It seems like he's trying to go through the verse too quickly, and you get the same sentiment with something like Another Late Night, where he has this carefree attitude, and it just sounds like a loose freestyle. But I will say this, I want to talk about some positive stuff, and Drake's best performance, of course, comes on 8 a.m. in Charlotte, where he proves to everyone that he still does have one of the sharpest pens in the game. But that pen, that strong elite pen, is absent on most of this album. And it's crazy for me to say this, but I feel like 8 a.m. in Charlotte doesn't even belong on this album.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
That's sort of my main complaint with the project as a whole, is the curation of this album is really off, bro.
It really is off. And I want to talk a bit about that, like maybe in the content and where certain things place. But for myself, even looking at something like Drew Picasso, for example, that's more like an R&B ballad where Drake is getting super melodic. I like that. I think that was a decent performance. Like, that was something that was not necessarily a stronger cut on the album, but it doesn't do necessarily any harm to the track list. But then again, there's also a lot of songs in here, like example, like a Drew Picasso, where it kind of cruises by, it doesn't necessarily do anything to push the needle. And this is something I'm asking myself as kind of like, I've been a fan of this guy's music for so long, and I've been covering his music now for over the past like 3 years with the podcast. It's been incredible to watch, but at a certain point, I do feel like maybe he has to slow down with the output just because maybe he needs to take some time back and just kind of like find something new
Yeah,
stylistically.
and there's nothing wrong with him going with more of an R&B centric album, which is definitely the case with this one. It was the case with Certified Lover Boy as well. But with this one, when you look at certain songs, like for example, 7969 Santa, he pretty much sounds numb, even though he's singing about being in pain. And I feel like that's where a lot of the R&B performances fall short, is that he sort of fails to convey any real emotion. It sounds like he's just cruising through the track and not really adding these exciting inflections or putting too much passion, but you do have those rare moments where he is on something like a Slime You Out, for example, which surprisingly remains a highlight for me on this album.
Oh, it's definitely up there as far as one of the best performances. I do feel like, in contrast with that song, when you look at the rest of the album, Drake is really flexing out his vocals. He's going deep with it. He's also changing it up. And even looking at the transitions from rapping to singing, I do feel like that was seamless on this song. But I don't feel like that was maybe the case with every single song. For example, like I believe it was on Daylight, for example, right? Where you have that transition.
I like Daylight, though.
So that's a song for me where I feel like it was one of those like sort of like forced performances, at least for myself, where you get that transition when the bass drops, and then after that Drake goes into more of like this quicker flow that comes through, and I just feel like it was so abrupt. Like I like it when he's able to transition smoothly, and that was somewhere where I just felt like it didn't happen.
I love the quick fiery flows. I liked the the more trendy ad libs, and I just feel like he brought this menacing energy that was a pick me upper for that point in the track list, which was still pretty early on. But another issue I have is the fact that when you go to Drake, you're looking for hits, you're looking for melodies that are catchy, and when I look at the hooks on this album, there's nothing that's really going to stick, I feel like. And
That's
even
true.
if I look at a song like, for example, What Would Pluto Do? That's an issue, again, with curation, where the first verse is the part where he has that melody where he goes, baby girl, Adonis need a sister. Okay, that was the most addictive melody and flow of the entire song, and that wasn't even chosen as the hook for it. That was just a section of the verse. And that's where you're asking yourself, like, is the hook really where it's supposed to be? Something else I want to talk about is just the fact that, when it comes to this project as a whole, I feel like with CLB, it sounded like Drake was lacking inspiration. And with this album, it doesn't sound like he's lacking inspiration, but it feels like the inspiration that he's pulling from is leading him astray. It's not leading him down the correct path where, he sounds passionate or he sounds like himself to a certain degree, because Drake has established his own sound over the years, and I don't feel like he needs to venture into other sounds. And I'm all for experimentation when it's executed well, and I feel like it wasn't.
That's very true. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I agree with you. And it's something that I feel like a lot of people are maybe having conversations about, is like, well, who influenced the project, this and that. And, I don't care who influenced what and who did what. I'm just looking at the end product. And when you look at this track list over the course of an hour and 24 minutes, it doesn't sound like he's in his element within the track list. And when you do, for example, find those moments and those performances on something like a first-person shooter, or on something like a Slime You Out, or on something like, let's say, an 8 a.m. in Charlotte, or even something like Tried Our Best, where it's actually a nice melody and he's getting into a nice pocket, I like those types of performances. I just feel like in certain instances on this track list, it was forced and it felt flat. And listen, whatever the curation process on the project was, I do feel like it kind of took away from the end experience.
And even taking inspiration from, let's say, Bad Bunny on a song like Gently, that has to be one of the worst Drake performances I've ever heard, where he goes into like the Spanglish bag, and it just sounds like he's doing a Bad Bunny impression to me, to be honest with you. And I think the artist performance is mid. I think we can agree on that. A lot of the performances do come off forced at certain times, and they lack a lot of the passion and soul that I feel like was present in earlier Drake material.
Well, even at that, I don't even want to do the compare game. Go to something like Dark Lane demo tapes, for example, something earlier this decade where you're getting top tier Drake performances, and it doesn't even compare, let's say, to the Nothing Was the Same. Or that's one thing I want you guys to understand, is that, listen, he's in a completely different page in his life, and he's in a completely different zone. I'm not looking for another Take Care here.
No,
I just want solid material from Drake.
And I didn't expect that. Like, even with the whole talk of like we're getting old Drake back, I wasn't really expecting that, because he's evolved, he's matured over time, he's in a different place in his life, and it's only normal that, he wants to try out new cadences, new flows, etc. But like I said, I just don't feel like he was pulling from the right directions, in my opinion. But let's go into the content of this album because, of course, Drake's pen, as I said earlier in this review, it's one of his best assets. He's always said that his strongest asset as an artist is his writing, and I feel like it's ironic because if you go back to a bar that Drake had spat on Is There More on the Scorpion album in 2018, he rapped too many lyrics about houses and loot. And when you go to this project, I feel like he's fallen into a cycle of repetitive lyrics, and a lot of the topics feel a bit meaningless, and that's shocking.
It is shocking. I was having a conversation with you this morning, actually, on a phone call, and I was just saying, like, he's one of my favorite writers. He's someone that I've gained so much respect for over the years, and someone that I've drawn so much inspiration from, especially from song concepts over the years and getting into that introspective Drizzy and and even the R&B writing Drizzy. Like let's not forget
Marvin's
that.
Room. Are you kidding me?
Like the Jungles.
Yes.
And, like the Feel No Ways.
The Redemptions.
Like Teenage Fevers. Like I'm not just talking about the lyrical miracle Drake. Drake is a fantastic writer on every single front, and I do feel like that was missing on this project. Like example, you go to the PND song "Members Only," and you have the bisexual wordplay, and it's just like, well, I'm not sure if those types of bars are something that I want to go back to. Like example, I'll have to go back to it.
Yeah, there's a bar is like "Feel Like I'm Bi" because you're one of the guys, girl. Another one, "I Want to Slide in Your Box Like a Vote." Another one was "You Put the No in Monogamy," and at the end of the day, yes, these are corny bars, and I feel like maybe Drake is just trying to have fun with it and like make us laugh to a certain degree. But when you catch a lot of these across the entire album, it's almost like Drake isn't like taking himself seriously to a certain point. And it's like, well, I get this is a looser, funner album maybe, where maybe he feels like it's a victory lap for all the success and the fact that he's still on top after 15 years. You crave a bit more substance as you go through this. And many of the songs deal with, Drake's problematic relationships over time and certain arguments he's had with women. Looking at Virginia Beach, he's singing about arguing over text with his girl and, turning to lean to cope and, not having any regret with the way he treated his girl. But there's nothing interesting about a lot of these songs. There's no story being told, no emotions being conveyed, no statements being made. And also, I have to say that you do have a bit of that on, for example, Bahamas Promises, where he actually goes into a relationship and, gives us a name. He talks about this girl, Haley, and how she wasn't faithful and how, she apparently ruined this trip they had to the Bahamas. And sonically, I wasn't a fan of the song, but I appreciated that there was a bit of context added. We got to actually hear a story out of that.
Yeah, and then even going to something like Away From Home, this is one of my favorite written songs on the entire album because everyone loves that Drizzy come-up story, especially us being from Canada. Like, it's so interesting to see the way that he laid it all out, and I just love the I remember and the way that he was able to place that in between every two lines and the way that it follows suit for the first and the second verse. I thought it was very interesting. It was a song that drew me back right away and something that I wanted to go back to on Genius just to see if I missed anything, and talking about the little things about how like his cousin gave him like just something to flip, gave him a pack to flip and he wasn't able to do it. Just a compare and contrast game of where he's at now in comparison to where he was at when he was a kid. And I really appreciate those types of things. And it's something that I feel like was so rare and scarce on this album that when you do get to something like, let's say, an 8 a.m. in Charlotte or even something like this and Away From Home, you cherish these moments so much because you have this for 2 songs out of like a 23 song track list, and it does take away from it. But now with the content matter of things, another thing is the curation, right? Like I feel like that was a problem throughout the entire project just because there's certain choices that are being made here content-wise and even hook-wise that just don't fit the bill. Going on to something like Calling For You, for example, that whole thing with the girl and the interlude in the middle.
The whole jerk chicken girl there?
Yeah, like complaining, like it's annoying. It doesn't necessarily do much for me, and maybe it's for some people. It's just not for me.
That song as a whole just never built up. Like it felt like he was building towards somewhere for like the whole, first minute and a half, and then you just go into this random skit that doesn't have anything to do with the essence of that track. But to be honest with you, I want to talk about Drake's desire to have these songs feel connected, because of course there is a motif within this album, and it has to do with dogs, right? You're gonna hear a lot of barking on particular tracks from Drake or from Tizo or other artists. And you also have the Bark radio station, where you have Snoop Dogg coming in at the end of 7969 Santa. You also have Sade coming in at the end of BBL Love Interlude. And as cool as it was to see that he made an effort to have something that binded these songs together, it was so loosely thrown in that you couldn't really feel like there was a vision or a direction that, again, made these songs sequence well one after the other, or that there was a beginning, middle, and end to the story he was trying to tell. It was just these random inserts of these dog motifs that, again, they didn't add up to anything. Like, cool, we're getting some dog references in the lyrics, but what does this do for making this album feel whole and complete?
And maybe that wasn't the vision for the album. That was something else.
But it seemed like it was because of the radio station and all these different elements.
Absolutely, but that's what I'm trying to say is that maybe it was just more of a loose concept that he kind of maybe wanted to use for branding of the project, and that was maybe sprinkled in throughout the content. And I think that's fair, but to your point, it becomes a bit useless to a certain extent when it's just so loosely there, and then you're questioning, well, where does this really bring me within the track list? So, I mean, listen, man, it's not a well-written album, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of the writing on it. There's very few takeaways as far as highlights go on this. You have the whole thing on first-person shooter where you do get some cool bars, especially for the first verse with the whole Super Bowl bar. But for the most part, it's kind of subpar for Drake standards.
Yeah, but of course you have bars like pick any of the who's who's. I got 22s for new crews. R.I.P. to the DJ from Houston. We lose screws. Helicopters, cop lights, and news crews. Like, where was that on the rest of this album? You know what I mean? Even looking at Away From Home, like you mentioned, there was potential. And at the end of the day, maybe he didn't want to get into a serious lyrical bag, or maybe he didn't want to forge creative stories within the R&B songs. But it makes you wonder, like, does Drake not know what to rap about anymore? Is he at the point where he's given us a lot of material and doesn't know where to go to next? Even Away From Home, even though I enjoy the writing of that track, he's given you that song before. He's given you that concept before.
He has given it to you. But still, I always appreciate that.
It's still appreciated, yeah.
The last thing, I mean, it's just a shame, too, because if you look at what J. Cole did on First Person Shooter, I'm going to get a bit
and we're going to get into that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. When Drake comes back in that second part with bars like Nadine, Christine, Justine, Kathleen, Charlene, Pauline, Claudine, man, I pack him in this phone like some sardines.
I did like the meltdown energy on there, though. Like,
yeah,
again,
it was cool, but it's
flow-wise, it was fire. Delivery-wise, it was a good performance. But yeah, lyrically, is it up to par with Cole? Not exactly.
Even if it wasn't up to par with Cole, it's just there's so much more opportunity, let's say. And that's what I'm kind of left wanting more out of this content section is like, the opportunity is there. There was just way too much real estate for it. So, listen, overall, I think the content was mid, man. It's
unfortunately, yeah.
This is an unfortunate statement. I never thought I'd say that on a Jersey album, to be quite honest with you. But let's get into the features, baby, because
a lot of features.
Tizo
Touchdown, 21 Savage,
Yes,
J. Cole, Yeet, SZA, Party Next Door, Chief Keef, Bad Bunny, Sexy Red, Lil Yachty, Adonis made the feature list as well. Where do you want to start with this? Let's talk about J. Cole first, who's just a lyrical magician on this song. He's at a point right now where every guest verse that he appears on, he absolutely spits venom every single fucking time. And he brought this grandiose energy with bars like people saying they want to off us, better be talking about working in cubicles. Then he slowly ramps up the energy and gives you other bars like hate how the game got away from the bars, man. This shit like a prison escape.
Yeah, I'm naming the album The Fall Off. It's pretty iconic because it ain't no falling off for me. Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's crazy.
And even the rhyme pattern switching so swiftly within that verse.
When he hits this flow, the spot rusher sprayed his whole shit up. God. The crop duster, not Russia, but apply pressure to your cranium. Cole's automatic when anium. Stop it, bro. Just stop
it. Best feature on the album, you could agree?
Bro, best verse on the album. I think it arguably...
No, 8 a.m. in Charlotte competes there. I don't know about that.
Which one on 8 a.m. in Charlotte, though?
The last verse, the third verse
I don't
competes
know.
heavy.
This is a great. The Spider-Man meme is the Spider-Man meme is me looking at Drake. I like that a lot.
Which
So
goes,
yeah,
which harkens, which is like sort of harpens back to they act like two legends cannot coexist on Middle Child. I like that connection there.
I really
but,
do enjoy that.
Yeah, let's talk about Tizo Touchdown now because he had a huge role to play on this album. Starting off with Amen, I absolutely love what he did there. Starting us off with the prayer, showing off his vocal range, and he fit right in with the choir that was playing behind him, and also just spiritual singing and some nice doo-wop-esque harmonies. I thought he killed it
I
on
felt
there.
like this could maybe even be a solo Tizo song as well, just because he has the intro and he has those two choruses stuck stuck on the sides of like that middle Drake verse, and I was just like, he easily has the best part of this song for me.
How did you like him on 79, 69 Santa?
Fire,
Yeah?
still fire. Yeah,
Still
he was
great.
He was great throughout this entire project, and I was like, man, shout out to Tizo Touchdown. It's like even when he was on Utopia, when he was on Call Me If You Get Lost, like these big moments, he never ceases to amaze me.
Doesn't miss.
Even if I'm not that big of a fan of his new studio album, like just being able to see him get into this zone is absolutely incredible. But where else you want to go? You want to go with SZA?
Let's talk about SZA, who also made more than one appearance. I definitely love what she did on Slime You Out. Just some really passionate singing, some of the sweetest melodies that you'll hear, and I love how dreamy and ethereal her vocals always sound, especially on something like Slime You Out. But then talking about Rich Baby Daddy, again, another curation mishap where you shouldn't have SZA harmonizing while Sexy Red is rapping, about what she's rapping about. And, I think the major issue for me was that SZA isn't used to rapping over production that has that quick of a BPM, and it felt like she had to rush her verse, and it just didn't come off as natural to me. So, again, fan of Slime You Out, not so much of the performance on Rich Baby Daddy.
I would have taken Sexy Red and maybe put her on her own solo track, and then
she was unnecessary on that song. Bro.
I'm just saying, if Drake wanted to include her on the album, I don't think she would have gone well with SZA. I just don't think it was the right curation choice for the moment. But yes, talking about Sexy Red, no sir, not for me. I understand some people might like it. I understand some people are saying, oh, well, it's for the girls in the clubs and stuff like this. Well, I am not a girl in the club.
But you know what?
I'm not coming to Drake's albums for this.
It's even the vocal mixing. I don't know if you heard, which, by the way, the hook is pretty cool. It's very City Girls-esque, which it's also over a Miami bass beat. But her vocals are clipping on the hook. I don't know if you hear it, but the vocal mixing is really not good.
Really?
I don't know if you caught on to that, but
no.
Yeah, that was another issue I pointed out. But let's talk about 21 Savage, because there's always excitement whenever he pops out on anybody's album. And after her loss, there's always anticipation for Drake and 21 collabs. So calling for you an average 21 verse, right?
Yeah, you suck my neck like a vampire. She suck on my neck like Dracula, like she Dracula.
Treating the game like a rap. Treating the rap game like a toilet was another one. And honestly, it's so standard.
All of my kids get left in her mouth. She says she don't even believe in abortions.
But you see, like, he also dropped lines like that on NC-17. It's nothing new for him. But my point is that I'm getting tired of the same flows and writing from 21.
It's like a copy paste.
I'm reaching that exhaustion point.
I am as well.
That's kind of what it's turned into.
I feel like he does have to do something a bit different for his studio album.
Yeah.
I'm going to be completely honest with you, because you're right. Like, I could give you a page book full of these 21 Savage verses.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that I'm not entertained, but now I'm not entertained. I'm at that point with it. But how about Yeet? How about art? How about Yeet, bro? What's going on with I don't give a fuck?
Yeet sounds right at home when I don't give a fuck. Like, he's yeeting on it, bro. He's doing his thing. He fucking carried the song. I have to give him props. And I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise, right? It's a Benny X rage beat. It was a song that he had made in 2021. So it's his recording. It only makes sense that he's going to do his thing. And I like the hook. I like his first verse, how audible he sounds, where you could actually hear what he's saying, which isn't always the case with him. Second verse was all right, I guess. But again, it's just so shocking to say that, Yeet actually carried Drake on the song for me.
Yeah, he had the best part on it. He definitely had the best part on it. And I also like how on beat he sounded for this production. Yeah. That was something that I don't necessarily find all that much with Yeet in certain instances. I like his flows and stuff, but sometimes you do find them out of the pocket and you're just like, well, this could be a bit better if you were to rap a bit more on beat. But in this instance, he absolutely glided all the way throughout. So big W for Yeet.
Speaking about rapping on beat, Lil Yachty on Another Late Night. really offbeat as per usual. I mean, I guess that's sort of like
The
his
Michigan
thing.
flow, yeah, like
It's his
that's
thing, but I just feel like he barely had a presence on the track, and he doesn't rap anything that's worth reciting or worth remembering. It was just a really forgettable verse for me, to be honest with you.
I like how he started at slow boat and practically now from the 6 because they kind of like took him in. I guess that kind of makes sense. I guess.
If you want to give some points somewhere, I mean, hey.
I guess that's maybe something.
Bad.
But for the most part, though, I agree with you. I genuinely don't think that it was a good performance.
No.
Some people might like it. Shout out to Cole Bennett for the beautiful. The video is beautiful for the song, by the way. It's actually really sick.
I love the video. That's my favorite part about that song. Let's talk about Chief Keef, who sounded amazing on all the parties for all the 15 seconds that he had on there. Like, he literally got subbed in and subbed out immediately. And I was just left wondering, I'm like, why take him out so soon? Like, he got the little Dirk treatment on Laugh and I'll Cry Later. Like,
I know. I would have liked to see him go a bit longer. I didn't like this performance off of first listen.
Really?
I didn't like it too much. I guess it was just maybe like the first listen bias. But
Yeah.
over the weekend,
Grew on you.
yeah, absolutely. And of course, he's actually on the refrain on 7969 Santa, where he has "Shit I Don't Like" after each and every single Drake line that comes within it. So shout out to Chief Keef, I guess, bro. He had a good performance on there. But what else do we got to go?
We
through?
got Party Next Door, who goes crazy on members
One
only.
of the best fucking features on this entire album comes from
Absolutely.
PND. But
Just-
like, what did you expect though? It's a PND and Drake link up. You
Yeah.
know, that's easy money. Like, you already know. Like, he's been there too many
It's a
times
cold
before.
Toronto R&B beat.
No,
like,
come on, it's too easy.
just some of the most contagious melodies on the entire
It
project.
gets me very excited for his next album.
It does.
I
It does,
cannot
bro.
wait to go into PND's next album. That's going to be absolutely incredible. But yeah, also for this, what's interesting is that I feel like he kind of picked up the energy of the song. I wasn't a big fan of Drake's first verse on this. And then PND comes through with the second verse. And
Revives it.
completely revives it. And then I feel like Drake picks up on that energy and like picks up where he left off.
Yeah.
So
And also Bad Bunny, it doesn't sound too good on Gently. He's choosing to rap with this low energy cadence and then switches to English just to say, fuck mommy, holy shit. And then fuck me so good, mommy. And it just made for like a lifeless club record to me. Like, it just, there was nothing there. Shout out to Adonis. You know what? It added personality to Daylight, bro. I thought the inclusion added some personality to it. I thought that it was fun, and it didn't sound forced to me.
no, absolutely. I mean, there's really,
I like it.
there's really nothing to judge when it comes to a child rapping.
I
on a
know.
track,
I'm just saying, like,
It's like, but congratulations.
it was done in good taste.
Absolutely. And you know what? I will give this project that. I like the Adonis branding. I'm not gonna lie to you.
That was fire.
Yeah,
From the album cover to the 8 a.m. in Charlotte video, it was cool,
Fuck
bro.
yeah, that's cool.
I love
Even
that.
in the tour, like, his picture was everywhere in Toronto. Like, I really like that. As someone that holds family very close to my heart, and I guess, when you're in that situation with Drake where you want to kind of like bring your son to work type of day, that's awesome.
And
That's really cool.
he's forming memories for his son, like, for a lifetime, and like including him in his art. It's a beautiful thing. So that's been really cool and heartwarming to see. But overall, the features are good. You have some that end up carrying the songs. You have others that feel out of place. But overall, there's definitely some curation mishaps, even within the features. But the performances were good enough. I'll say that.
All right, let's go into the production. Very, very,
Yeah.
very different album for Drake when it comes to this soundscape.
The beats have a big range, I would say,
Yes.
from rage rap to trap music, all the way to Miami bass on a song like Rich Baby Daddy, and even like some traditional Drizzy beats where you have this ambient and moody textures to the tracks. And honestly, it's a good collection of beats, but the soundscape does kind of feel all over the place. But what's like one or two major standouts for you production-wise?
Shout out to Conductor on 8 a.m. in Charlotte.
Oh, my
Well,
goodness.
Conductor, Mario Luciano, and Jason Wool.
Wow.
Easily one of the best produced songs I've heard all year. The sample flip is absolutely gorgeous. I love the way those beautiful vocals ring off and back, and how much emotion those alone convey for the rest of the song.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
absolutely.
So that's a major standout for me. Another standout for me has to be I Don't Give a Fuck. That Benny X beat is absolutely stupid with
That was
Sebastian Shaw.
such a thrilling beat,
Because the
bro.
thing is that the way that intro starts with the vocal sample,
And those trumpets.
exactly,
Oh,
and then the
wow.
way that it just drops. You know, to a certain extent, I feel like that intro might have been a bit better if it was just long. Like, just give that production to Drake. See if we could get some drums in back there. Maybe chop that up even and see if that would have been a good Drake beat. You know?
I know, absolutely. Even looking at, for example, if you look at the DJ Screw interlude, which the name of it's escaping me, but everyone knows what I'm talking about. I think it's Screw the World interlude.
It is, by the way.
That was obviously, DJ Screw's remix and freestyle to Nas's If I Ruled the World.
Yeah.
It was his chopped and screwed version. But that was a tease because I'm like, this is one of the best beats on here. Why aren't you rapping on this, Drake?
Well, I mean, maybe it was a thing of like, well,
Just
I'm going to
paying-
respect. Yeah,
just
pay
paying
homage,
homage, but that still is something I think a lot of us wanted to see. And another one of the hardest beats on this entire thing has to be first-person shooter, where you have these sinister horns, these dark strings, hard-hitting drums, and even the second half kicked off with an even darker section, even faster BPM. So shout out to Coleman, Boy Wonder, Vinyls. They all went to work and gave us one of the more cinematic and grimier beats that we were craving. Like, we needed a triumphant sound on this project, and that's one of the rare moments where we got it. So salute to them.
How did you feel about the Frank Ocean sample in Virginia Beach?
You know what's funny? I'm like, when I first heard it, I'm like, this really reminds me of something. And you know what it reminds me of, funny enough? Where the Streets Have No Name by U2, bro.
Really?
Because you have this droning synth, and you have these echoing guitar riffs that are super atmospheric, and I'm like, this is really similar. But it also reminded me of Tuscan Leather, because Frank Ocean's sample of Wise Man is reversed and pitched up, and it's sort of similar to what they did with Whitney Houston. So I love that production. It took me back to Nothing Was the Same, and that was one of those moments where I'm like, yes, this sounds like an older Drake production.
That was a fantastic.
That was fucking fire.
Yeah, the production on this song is incredible.
How did you feel about, a lot of like the soul sample stuff that was in here? Even looking at like BBL interlude. You had
I feel like it was pretty standard though for Drake, if I'm being completely honest with you. It's cool, but it doesn't have like that grandiose cinematic feeling that a lot of those other highlights do for me, and that's something that I'm not necessarily a fan of. Maybe it was just like they took a bit more of a minimalistic approach, so you have more room for Drake and there's more room to get his vocals off. But for the most part, it wasn't too impressive. Another Benny X production that I really like is Away From Home with Sad Pony and Co. Even I believe Lil Yachty has a production credit on here. It's a very grimy and like low key sort of beat, and it goes really well for the Drake vocals in my opinion. Just because Drake is using a bit more of like that subdue and also quick flow, so maybe it would have gotten confusing if you had something a bit too complicated on this. So that was another highlight for me. But where do you think the production went wrong here?
Where did the production go wrong? I would take it to something like 7969, where you have this minimalistic, bare bones beat that has sort of like these cheap sounding snares, and overall I feel like oftentimes it is cool to give Drake these very spacious beats where the elements like the drums are like very sparse, like they're patiently thrown in there throughout the track, but there's a lot of beats that just left me feeling nothing, not setting up any mood, not really sonically thrilling me in any way. So there's a couple of those moments on the track list. Drew a Picasso is another beat that I wasn't thrilled about, to be honest with you.
You see, I like 7969 Santa.
As a production, yeah.
It was cool. I like the way that they kind of flipped it and inversed it, That was kind of like something that I did enjoy. But you're right, like it kind of just gets drowned out. I think that was maybe my problem with the production, is that I would have liked it if it was like, if you take out If I Don't Like, and if you maybe had a better Drake cadence on there. But yeah, it was just kind of like a miscuration on that performance.
Another Late Night was another beat that I feel like was just so like sort of generic for the whole Rage sound. I mean, there were no beats on.
So you would put that into like a Rage category, because you see, like, I don't know, I feel like it's maybe a bit different than that.
I don't know, with the electronic synths and like the bass, it sounded somewhat Rage-ish to me. But yeah, you do find that on some other tracks on here as well.
Mr.
But
Rage.
some Mario Judah in here. But the production was good overall.
Production was good.
I don't think I have too many complaints there. And he has access to the best producers in the game, so it only makes sense that you're gonna get some well-produced instrumentals. But again, the soundscape was sort of a bit all over the place.
I'm still waiting for that Boy Wonder executive produced project again.
Give us another if you're reading this, bro.
It has to happen. It's like every project now that I'm going to, he legitimately, and of course the entire camp, have the best productions on the entire album. And like it's without, like, I think it's like a hands down sort of thing for me, at least
Bro,
in my opinion.
let's get back to Wanda, to 40, to Manish, to Vinyls, like the guys that really crafted Drake's best soundscapes.
Benny X did a good job on
Benny
it.
X did do a good job. He did do a good job.
Benny X did a good job. He's a monster too. He has so much versatility.
He does.
He's able to do so much.
But yeah, let's go into the replay value of this album. And listen, obviously this is hard to judge days after the album comes out, but to be honest with you, when I look for something that's going to be timeless, I look for innovation from an artist. I look for memorable quotables, which you don't really get too many besides 8 a.m. in Charlotte and a couple of other cuts. So that weighs it down a little bit too. The fact that it's so bloated and there's so many filler tracks on here doesn't help its case either.
Poor curation choices that just makes you question tracks as a whole. A lot of Drake performances that don't necessarily feel all that natural for him. And if you're a Drake fan, you're maybe questioning, well, are we going to get another album of this, or is he going to go back to maybe his own original sound, maybe innovating in a new way? And that's what I wanted out of my replay value, was to be like, well, what is Drake bringing to the table this time? And to be honest with you, I just don't feel like I like what he brought to the table, and that's just a me thing. If I have to be completely honest with you, I'm being generous. I'm keeping maybe 4 to 5 songs.
Which songs would you say you're keeping on here?
If I really had to be honest with you, First Person Shooter is going to be absolutely staying. 8 a.m. is going to stay. Away From Home is going to stay. And then I'll go back to Tried Our Best. That's probably where, and maybe even Drew a Picasso. That's where I'm at.
I think
right
I have
now.
a couple more, to be honest. I got Virginia Beach. I got Amen. I got Daylight. First Person Shooter. I'll go I Don't Give a Fuck. I'll go Tried Our Best. What would Pluto do? Then I'll go 8 a.m. in Charlotte. Away From Home. I'll probably take out 9 out of 23, which is still, again, not the best of ratios, especially for a Drake album. And it just comes down to there being too much to go through, and the fact that I'll never be able to enjoy this as a full album experience from front to back. That's the
I was CLB treatment.
on re-listens. I was struggling, like, tapping in from start to finish without taking any breaks. Like,
it is a very long
lengthy,
album.
bro.
It's a long album to get through, and that might be a struggle for some people. So
replay value mid.
yeah, absolutely.
There's not too much to take out of this.
But okay. Overall thoughts, I guess I'll start this off, Lou. Listen, man, I set myself up for failure with this album. I'm not gonna lie to you.
You can blame yourself on this one?
I blame myself on this one. Just because, like, not that I expected the old Drizzy to come back. And I even said this in a bunch of videos that we made about the album and even in the live stream. I was just expecting a concise and quality album. That's all I really wanted. You know, I wanted something that was going to feel different than CLB, something that was going to have a bit less bloat, something that was going to see Drake maybe tap into a multitude of different things, not only the rapping sort of things, like even, let's say, getting into better R&B records and stuff like that. And I didn't get it all that much, to be quite honest with you. As far as his rating goes, I do feel like this is the most poorly written Drake album, in my opinion. I also do think that when you have to look at the production, it was cool. There was highlight moments, but it's not really doing anything to push the needle as far as Drake material goes. The features and the collaborations, yes, you do have your moments, but for the most part, you do have certain mishaps in the curation process of it. And for the replay value, man, if I'm taking only like 4 to 5 songs out of an hour and 24 minutes, I have to ask, like, where's the value for me going back to it? But I will say this. Overall, it makes me hyped for what's going to be coming next.
Especially knowing that he's taking a break, I think that's a good idea.
Oh, that's the smartest thing he could do.
It's a good idea.
Absolutely. And I think that it was inevitable at a certain point. This guy's given us over fucking like 70 records over the past 3 years, you know, and he produces at the rate that he wants. He's an animal. Like, he has been going at it over the past couple of years. But now I feel like it's a good time to just like recollect, enjoy, and, you know, just kind of see where the next vision is going next.
Absolutely, just because, you know, he has kept shit exciting by dropping so often. But this album obviously felt very long, very boring. And my main takeaway is that it's sort of just plagued by emptiness, because there's not much in here that's eliciting any emotions or any feelings out of me. It's not provoking these things. And I feel like that's an essential part of any music that I want to tap into, is for the music to move me in some way. And that just didn't do that. Apart from that, through 23 songs, you do have a variety of different styles and genres being thrown into the mix. And there's no denying that it's more of a playlist than an album. But even at that, it's a poorly curated playlist that doesn't have good sequencing, doesn't often have good song structure. The mixing is poor at times. The chemistry between the artists isn't always as great as you want it to be. And it just doesn't feel like this project was handled with the time and care that Drake usually orchestrates for his projects.
That's very true.
It's very disappointing.
That was also a nitpick of mine, is that I wish he would have maybe taken more time with this vision and just fleshed it out a bit more, because apparently the album was cooked over the course of the tour, and I'm not sure what
and
was
that's
where.
challenging to be on tour and to make an album. So I can't fault him for that. But like you said, I think he definitely should have taken more time, because certain songs do sound a bit rushed. And it sounds like there was low effort thrown into a lot of these. And it's unfortunate, because we're always rooting for Drake. He's one of our favorite artists. He was the soundtrack to our lives for a big time, and I think that he still will be, but he needs that reset. He needs new inspiration. He needs to find a new creative bag to put him back at the position he was at, where he was making peak music.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
Mid-album. It is a mid-album.
It's a mid-album. It's a mid-album score.
Unfortunately, yeah.
It's
lacking hunger and motivation, man. It is.
It really is.
It is.
I never thought I'd see the day. I'm being completely honest with you. And it's really like one of the first, like for myself, like mishaps within the catalog. And even having some conversations with friends over the weekend, it's quite interesting, because like now it's like, well, where does he go? You know, even like, you know, Michael Jordan had his downfalls, Kobe Bryant had his downfalls, Wayne Gretzky had his games. Like, you know, the greats have their games where they don't necessarily show up, or where they don't necessarily, you know, rise to the occasion in a series. But I feel like for Drake, he is one of the greatest of our generation, and that he will bounce back with something that's going to be incredible. So, guys, that's going to conclude our thoughts. That is For All the Dogs. We wrapped up an era. Thank you guys so much for following this rollout with us. Let us know where we got it right. Let us know where we got it wrong. And let me know how you're feeling about For All the Dogs in the comment section. Guys, as Lou mentioned at the beginning of this episode, we did do our full live album reaction to For All the Dogs on our Patreon plan. If you guys want to check it out, check the link in our description, the pinned comment. It's all there for you guys. It's sorted. Enjoy the live album reaction. It was a pleasure having you guys with us there at 6 a.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, it was awesome,
last Friday.
bro.
That was a different type of listening.
I was wired. I was still ready to, to
just dive
get into that album.
Absolutely.
So yeah, much love, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.